All right. Welcome to You're On in 5, The Art of Understudying.
The only podcast to celebrate the work of actors in understudy roles.
Understudying demands tons of preparation with minimal rehearsal.
Or sometimes none at all.
But it can end in triumphant glory.
In these conversations, we'll amplify the diverse voices of actors who have understudied. We want to hear about the artist's technique, experience, and journey.
As well as whatever's on our mind that day. Hey there, I'm Scott Sava, and this is You're On in 5, The Art of Understudying. You might know me from The Golden Girls Save Christmas, a Helen Hamburg production, where I'm playing Stan Zabornak.
And I'm Elana Elise, your co-host here today. And I don't know what you might know me from because I haven't done anything in a little while.
Great. Our guest today is Timothy Edward Kane. You might know Tim from An Iliad at Court Theater. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. Hey, so we're just going to get right into it with our
Great.
standard first question, and that is, what was your first understudy gig?
In 2000, the now no longer Famous Door Theater, they were doing a production of Early and Often, which was a political farce about politics in Chicago and election. And I was covering the lead played by Mark Grapey. And he booked a TV show like he always does and you knew he was going to be out to shoot. And so I knew I was going to be going on that day. And the cool part of that is that they ran over. And so they never got to his scene. So he was released and he could have done the show, but he let me do it anyway.
Oh, that's nice. Did you come and see it?
He did. He came and saw it.
He did. Oh, man.
It was weird.
Yeah, it is weird. So did you know prior to that you would for sure be going on? Like during the process, did you know you'd have a guarantee?
No, it wasn't. We were in that show. It was pretty successful. So it ran for I think I left it after 3 months. And I think it may have run for 3 more after that. I can't remember. It was it's now 773. That was the theater building then. And I think we were into that run a few weeks when he booked the job. So I didn't know when I agreed to be the understudy that I'd be guaranteed a performance.
Were you totally prepared?
Totally prepared.
Look at you, fancy.
Yeah, right?
Did they help you get to that point of preparedness, or was that like your own work and ethic and stuff?
I was in the show already, so as I'm sure you both have experienced. I mean, just being in it and hearing it helps, right? Like there's a kinesthetic experience of watching somebody else, and hearing it every night that helped. And now who was the stage? Colleen Kenny, I think, was the stage manager. She had us in good shape. We had at least, I think it was a low cat tier contract, but I'm pretty sure we had understudy rehearsal at least once a week.
Okay, great.
So yeah, I was ready.
Well, that sounds awesome for your first time doing that.
Lucky, yeah.
I have a question about that, but because that was so perfect, tell us about your next time. Your next time understudying.
Very shortly after that, I mean, when I started in Chicago, like so many others, I was just taking whatever. So that included more understudying than I've since done. But then I went and got to work at Navy Pier at CST, Chicago Shakes. And so my second show there, I was cast as the King of France in a production of King Lear. And then I was cast to cover also Edgar. And that was a little more traumatic experience. I had auditioned for the role 3 times for Edgar. And I was new to Chicago. It was my second year in Chicago. And the director didn't know me very well. I had done one show for her. It was for Barbara Gaines, now retired, who she cast me in All's Well That Ends Well the year before. So she kind of knew who I was, but Edgar was a step up. And so she didn't cast me. So just cast me as the cover instead. And so I didn't rush to prepare because I was mad. I mean, I was in rehearsal, I was in the ensemble, I was hearing the show, but I wasn't as mature as I should have been. I was like, I'll get to it when I get to it, which was so stupid. And the actor that was playing Edgar, and they began to creatively diverge. And so, mysterious to me, being a new young professional, I was called in for a private session where they just wanted to see where I was with my understudying. And so it was just her and me, and I think one of the stage manager and the casting director brought me into a rehearsal room and had me run through some of the soliloquies, just to see how I was prepared. That's what they said it was for. So that's what I had no other reason to believe that it was for any other reason. So then it was at least a week later. We were coming out of tech, and I got a call from the theater saying that they would like me to play the role, that the actor who had originally been cast was no longer going to be playing it, and I would be going on. So I finished the last day of tech, and we had previews the next day, and I did the rest of the run in the role. And because of how quickly I had to prepare, I never felt like I belonged in that play. And that was, I eventually did. It was they were doing longer runs then, so it ended up being 90 some performances, but I kept getting injured. It was King Lear. The set broke apart. It rained on stage. There was fog everywhere. And, poor Tom, when Edgar, when he gets stripped down and he's pretending to be crazy and he's just running all over the place. And I just kept getting injured over and over again.
Oh, my goodness.
Went to the emergency room twice, got hit in the face with a sword. Other understudies were going on. And yeah, the understudy for Edmund came on, and the spacing for the fight got off, and he ended up hitting me. Right. I have a scar right there. That's how close it came to gouging my eyeball out.
Whoa.
Luckily, I was wearing a mask at the time. And if I hadn't been wearing the mask, I'd have a glass eye. So that was my second professional understudying experience was traumatic enough to scare me for a really long time.
I'll bet. That's intense. And that's the kind of thing that I would have received as punishment for my attitude. Like I would totally be like, okay.
Oh my God, karmically, I learned a huge lesson. Swallow your ego, you big doofus. Do your work. Your ego will not survive that experience.
There's definitely also something about like, there's twofold. It's the upsetness, ego thing, but then it's the like, this is the role I wanted to play, like and finding the space to like be like, I knew it was for me, like when you do get it, but that's the positive part. But that's hard because you're busy. Instead of like, I knew it was for me, it's like, I knew this was for me, and y'all was playing for too long, and now I don't care no more. I mean, truth be told, mature as I am, I still have those moments.
I regret it.
So that's very interesting. I'm glad that I asked you to give your second experience because what I wanted to ask about the first one, and now both of them, is when you did you have specific feelings about being an internal understudy these first, like in the show and covering other roles, like separate from the attitude and ego things, like just that fact in and of itself? What'd you think of that when you were asked to do it?
Well, it's a little more money. So, I mean, just practically speaking, as a professional, you're like, I'm getting paid to be in it. It might not be the best role, but I'm in it. So I'm collecting that check every weekend. It's going to be a little bit more than otherwise. And then really not knowing any differently until later when I was an outside cover, how much easier it is to be in it. Because you've been in the room the entire time. You understand the timing of the entire organism as it's made, which as an outside cover is like your rhythm is asynchronous almost. It doesn't seem to align always in my experience. So being an internal cover, separating my own negativity about the King Lear experience that I brought into it, it was actually made it easier. I mean,
Oh,
just
that's
being in
great.
it, having seen, particularly with that one, seeing the sword fights, knowing how the stage worked. If I hadn't, it would have been even a greater disaster.
Challenge. Yeah. Thanks for that. Because I poo poo that as an actor.
Oh
And
yeah,
so the times it's come up, I'm always like, I don't want to do that. I still don't want to do that, but I'm happy to hear a positive take on it, you
you
know?
you prefer to be an outside cover and not be in it?
I'd rather be in it and not cover or be an
Oh,
outside cover.
okay,
Yes.
got it.
I
Yeah,
always rather be in it.
okay, all right. I just wanted to make. I was like, you're really surprising me with that take.
No, I just don't want to be in it and also
Oh no, yeah, no.
understudy.
If I have the
Yeah.
choice, you're absolutely right. Yeah, but
Yeah.
when I was starting out, I wasn't going to say no. That's for sure.
Yeah, I can dig it. I should have been
Yeah.
smarter. Um, but like, I don't like it.
Do you think like because it was Shakespeare, as opposed to like, I don't know, a more modern play or a new play, that maybe that made it easier since Shakespeare is so metered, almost like music?
Yeah, right. I don't. That's. I can't say whether that's true for myself or not. I've done as much Shakespeare as anything else, so how I memorize it, I don't think of it as anything different.
Mm.
And I'm not a. I mean, I can carry a tune and I enjoy music, but it's not like it's not part of my performative process, like my process as an actor. So I don't know if that's it or not. I think it was Panic that was the most helpful. And then the other Shakespeare I've understudied, um, the more I've done it, just the logic of how verse works, that you can't begin a thought without without understanding where it's going.
Mm.
So I guess in that sense, memorizing it does seem to come easier
Mhm.
because the logic has presented itself already in the formula of how it's made.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm answering yes. That is why.
Cool. Cool. When you were in that situation where you were like showing off your understudy work, did you have an inkling that maybe the original actor was getting pulled, or
I
and also then he's shaking his head no for our listeners. um, and my other question for that is, did that uh cause you anxiety going into that like rehearsal at all?
The anxiety was that I wasn't as prepared as I should have been. I thought I
Yeah.
was going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It was really, again, my ego was blinding me to the realities of what was happening. Because I would say about the actor that was let go is that nothing had changed to my eye, and from his table read on the first day of rehearsal to the day he was dismissed. So I it was a surprise to me that that was fireable, right? Like I didn't like I was too young. It was only my third or fourth professional show in Chicago, so I didn't know people got fired.
Mm.
So being called in for that like temperature check on where I was with my work, I really thought was like, is he working hard enough as an understudy? I didn't think that now though, and forevermore, I would always think that if somebody had that happen. And the odd other thing about it is that I was non-equity at the time,
Mm.
and the actor who was fired was equity. And if you fire someone for artistic reasons, you still have to pay out that contract. And because he left the show and I moved up as non-equity, in order to satisfy the contract, they needed to hire another equity actor. So they hired an equity actor to cover me. So there were two people getting paid more not to do the role than I was getting paid to do.
Wow, isn't that something?
That's the commerce of understudying.
Right. But also I think that aside from the trauma and drama, less trauma, more drama of that experience, I think it's good to be oblivious to an actor's, discontent, right? Especially if it was them clashing, director and actor clashing.
Yeah.
It's not really for you to notice because and if you think about it, if you noticed it, then you might have been like chomping at the bit. Like, is he out of here? Is it my turn? Which changes how you operate,
Right. Yeah.
especially at that time, as I, just surfacely understand your state of mind as an immature artist, that's where your head would have been. And that would have still been that would have negatively impacted your performance, right? Like,
Yeah.
I still get surprised when actors are fired
Mm-hmm.
as a person who has had to fire some. Like, it's still just like it's an anomaly. Like, why would you do something to have me remove you or to get removed? Like, it feels like it has to be so egregious.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
get removed from a show, even to this day. So
Yeah.
it still surprises me when I hear about it locally, like
Yeah.
people, I don't know what people are doing in the big old world.
Right. Or in commercial theater that's for profit, I'm sure that's a revolving door. Like the producers just decide we need somebody else with a different whatever. But in Chicago in particular, even at that nascent stage of my career, like it just felt like such an ensemble driven organism, like as a community, like
Yeah.
everybody's going to work together and collaborate to make the thing. Unless someone does something egregious from a personnel standpoint, right? Like they do something inappropriate, say, or do something, you're like, obviously a fireable offense, but just someone not being as good as you hope then they would be,
Right.
that's terrifying as an actor, right? Like, because I don't, that tiny voice is like, you're not good enough. You could get fired. Is not the
Yeah.
most creatively, conducive thought.
No, it's not.
No, you're like, I already got the job. How can,
Yeah.
like, if you wanted me in the first place,
Right.
then like what happened? Yeah, it's not a good position to be in.
No.
Tim, did you have a degree in theater?
Yeah, two. A Bachelor of Science. I'm just like, for whatever that's worth, a Bachelor of Science, because I didn't take a foreign language. And then I went and got my MFA.
And during your studies, did understudying come up?
No, my undergrad, there definitely was no understudies. 2-week runs, that a gamble on just whether or not everybody got through it or not. And kids are young, so they'll gut it out. And then in graduate school, same thing. No, there were no understudies.
Yeah, that's something.
Yeah.
This world.
Well, and Tim, you're also currently a professor at Loyola, right?
Yeah, correct. And we have them now.
Oh, okay.
During
do you know what the reasoning?
COVID.
Great.
COVID made it obvious.
To 2020.
Yeah.
Out of all of the history of theatrical academia.
Yeah, right. I was new. I started full time in 2020. So I don't know what or if any discussions had been held prior to that, me being in those meetings. But the likelihood, as we all recall, of someone having to miss for having tested positive just made it so obvious that we needed to have it. Now we've evolved it. It used to be, what do I want to say? It's not even, what's evolved is the students' understanding of what that job is.
Right.
They all had a kind of a confused, the history of what high schools do with double casting. So they figured if they were an understudy, they should get a guaranteed performance, which is not how understudying works. So having them understand how the organism works professionally and what it should do to support their peers and what that learning outcome is to be an understudy, we've had to make more specific. But I think it's a positive experience.
That's fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that. I mean, that was Scott's. There's
Purposes?
a word.
Purposes?
Well, sure, that's it. That's not the word I wanted, but that was.
It's a word. I've heard it.
Yeah, that was his inspiration. I'm going to use that word for creating this podcast. And a conversation I found myself having over the time that we've been doing this is the reminding of everyone, even actors, that an understudy isn't a lesser position. Actors understudy. It's a job, and there are people who have never understudied and they've had perfectly fine careers. And so, there was this actual line, for like an understudy is something else. And nope, it's an acting job. All actors could theoretically understudy. And I think having those conversations have been helpful to people. Like, it's not a
Oh
thing.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really glad to hear that they're learning about it, and I hope that that spreads in academia.
I hope so
It's
too. I mean,
important.
they should know. I mean, as young professionals, presumably entering the field, they should learn as many things as they can. One of those things should be how to be a reliably and a creatively effective understudy.
Hmm.
Well
Yeah.
put.
Are you finding that the understudies are prepared? Or are they like going all the way with it?
The expectation that they can be as prepared, there just isn't enough time.
Okay.
We have student stage managers, so they can't run an understudy rehearsal. So it really is about the understudies showing up. A lot of internal covers.
Hmm.
It's academic theater, so creating casting an ensemble from which the understudies would be in the room all the time anyway. So they understand the show, they understand any choreography, what the relationship is between the principal or their overstudy and the director. So they're like in the room for those conversations. So in the event that they have to go on, they're prepared to creatively help the ship stay afloat, and presumably working on the blocking on their own.
Yeah.
But there just isn't enough time in an academic schedule to have those extra outside understudies. And by the time they did, the show would be closed, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Are there any other standout experiences you've had as an understudy that you want to share?
sure. The one that comes to mind is that I've been in 5 productions of Hamlet, and 3 of them I covered Hamlet,
Oh.
um, and uh, and then I did go on the last time. So just as I was getting almost too old to reasonably do it, I finally
Yeah.
got my chance.
Yes.
I'd been Laertes twice, and Guildenstern and Horatio, and Laertes again. So I guess it's 3 Laertes. I can't remember now. But then I was an external cover for Hamlet in 2019, and he was having vocal problems,
Mm.
and so I had to live by the phone, and I got to go on. So it was great. It was fantastic. It was absolutely outstanding. The only bummer is that because he, and maybe you've experienced this, he couldn't decide whether or not he was going to call out or not,
Mm-hmm.
even though the theater and the stage manager was saying, take some days and then just be back.
Right.
So no one got to come see it
Ah.
because he could
It
never,
was,
he would never decide until just 2 hours before.
Wow.
yeah.
But there was one that my son happened to be home. He was 2019. He would have been like in 6th grade, 7th grade. He was home, and so I was like, "Do you want to come?" So he came and saw it. But
Oh.
my wife was in a show across town at the Goodman. She was in Winter's Tale at the same time, and the start times and run times were slightly different. So she was able to jump in a cab and race over and see the last like 15 minutes of one of them.
That's
Mm.
But it
nice.
was cool. I knew a lot of people in the show, so even though I was an outside cover, I felt it was fun to be on stage with those folks. And
Yeah.
one of the times I went on, there were some people that were really people that I loved happened to be there anyway to see the show, and they got to see me in it.
Mm.
So that was just pure coincidence. So I had never had that. I mean, that role is just forget about it.
Yeah. That's great. Do you feel like by the time you had done so much, you had observed so much, you had understood so much, do you feel like you had so much meat ready for Hamlet by that point? Ah, I love that feeling. I did
Oh
that
my
with
god, I
for
was so
Colored
ready.
Girls.
Oh, is that
My
right?
Yeah, because I was a young like I knew that I was meant to play Lady in Red, right? I'm just like, so I got cast in it as not that, as a younger person. I was still in Detroit at the time, and I was like, I was miserable. And the woman who put me in that lesser role like knew what I wanted to do. And so I had had certain experiences with her, and I talked with my brother about it. And my brother was like, fuck her. And that was like all I needed. And I quit the show. And here I am, like 20 years later, I finally got to do Lady in Red, and it was everything I knew that I could do with it. Like it was like, I probably wouldn't have rocked it as well if she had cast me then. And that was just like, I don't even know who would have seen it then, but like I got to do it here, in Evanston. But just thinking about like, the experiences that I built up, not specifically with that show, the way you had the opportunity with Hamlet, but just like everything that I needed to put into that. Like I had all these years of build up, and so I could really just go for it. That's what I imagined about you with Hamlet.
I think you're right. And a couple of the others that I had covered were actors that now the way I've started this makes it seem like it wasn't true the last time. But in the previous iterations, they were actors, they were local actors that I had worked with before and counted as friends and esteemed. And so watching them play Hamlet was fascinating and cool. And I didn't really, it was their production. I didn't really want to go on for them. Mm-hmm. But this production was with an actor who had been cast out of New York, who I didn't know. It was a different aesthetic, and it was a performance I observed more with a greater sense of remove. Sure. And to your point, Alana, I had a clearer idea of how I would have done it had it been mine, right, by then. Yeah. And so getting the opportunity to go on didn't mean that I like flexed my Hamlet. It was just that I just got to do it, and I was ready to do it.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Huh. One day I'll be on stage again. It sounds like you've been, you've had a pretty just solid career, like stable. Have you had to do any non-theater stuff for income?
Oh, sure. Yeah. When I first moved to Chicago, I worked actually, an office job working for the state of Illinois. I worked for the Illinois Bureau of Tourism. The good thing about having a graduate degree is that it, qualifies you for all sorts of things. Just the fact that you have a postgraduate degree, people are like, wow, okay, fine, you can do this. And so I did that for 2 years while I was starting out. And then I got like an equity job, and I was like, I don't ever need to work in an office again. 3 months later, how am I going to pay rent? Mm-hmm. And so then I picked up all the sorts of, I temped and, I worked in a bar, and what else did I do? Then I went broke again, and some guy I met in a bar who was a theater guy. He was like, I have this job. I can bring you on. You can just do it. It was mindless, like, not accounting, but it was really just like moving paper from one box to another, like that kind of office job. Mm-hmm. And then eventually I started teaching, which in Chicago is, there's a lot of actors with graduate degrees or not who have commensurate, professional experience and all kinds of places that you can apply that trade. Mm-hmm. So it was hard to break into actually getting a slot to teach acting. Yeah. So I started teaching public speaking at Oakton Community College. And then from there, I taught public speaking at DePaul University. And then because I work at Court Theater a lot, I was able to teach an acting class down there when I was in a show down there once. And so I started slowly building that resume. And then somebody got cast in a show and had to drop out of teaching a class at Loyola. And so I got that opportunity. And then I was adjunct then at Loyola beginning in 2013. And then worked pretty much there. I would teach 2 classes a semester. And the good thing about being an adjunct is that you don't have to go to any of the meetings. So all you do is you go to your class and you teach. And then I was able to negotiate my contracts, my theater contracts, to work around my teaching schedule. Mm-hmm. So that was pretty much, I've just been teaching since then.
That's really awesome. When did you come to Chicago, and from where?
I went to graduate school at Northern Illinois University, which is out in DeKalb. Mm-hmm. And I graduated from there in 1999 and moved to Chicago.
Nice.
So, Tim, it sounds like you've had really strong experiences as an understudy. Is there any situations where you either weren't prepared or things went disastrously wrong when you went on stage?
I don't, luckily, there's never been disaster. I mean, the closest it came to was, being thrust into that production of King Lear with just having missed the opportunity to have been more mature about it,
Sure.
both personally and creatively, that I could have gotten more out of that experience, and maybe would have stayed out in the emergency room. But I think that there was part of it that also taught me that it is just a play, no matter what. And obviously, we all have different relationships to that. But even if stuff goes wrong, I mean, I'm shrugging, listener. I think audiences love it when stuff goes wrong.
It's true.
They do.
And I don't mean that I don't want things to go wrong, but I've been on stage when things do go wrong, and it's not so bad. It's actually fun. It's exciting. Nothing brings all the actors like immediately into presence than something going wrong.
So true.
And all of a sudden something electric has happened, and we're all adapting, and we're all interacting spontaneously in a way that we haven't maybe in a few weeks to any particular moment. And an understudy's energy changes that already. So I can't think of anything going terribly wrong when I've gone on as an understudy. There was another production of King Lear that I covered that I just didn't want to go on for at all. I took it.
Yeah.
I took the job for the insurance weeks, and then you have to go and watch it for twice a week or for however many times. You're like, oh, I just don't even. I don't want to be in it. I don't want to see it anymore. I'm sick of watching it. So I've had that experience, but luckily I didn't have to go on. And again, the actors I was covering, I totally respected. I didn't want to play their roles. It's their job. I don't. I'm just here just in case.
Tim, you have if like almost a textbook trajectory if an actor could design their path, right? I'm making this up. I just met you, but based on what I'm hearing. So then my question, and this is a question we've asked in the past, Scott likes to say, what was your aha moment? Like, what made you want to act, and how did you know it was the thing for you?
You're right. I've been very fortunate. I mean, that, the thing I said I wanted to do, I've been able to do since 1999. I was like, I just wanted to go and do theater in this cool theater town. That's all I wanted to do. And so far so good. That has been my good fortune, to have built a career doing just that. So I do know I'm lucky. But my aha moment, I think, is probably related to how I feel about that spontaneity of things going wrong. Is what drew me in was improvisation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at one point early, when I was in high school, I was like, I'm going to be on Saturday Night Live. That's all I want to do. Because it wasn't a particular play. My parents didn't go to the theater, so I didn't go and see. I'm dating myself, but when I was coming up and starting out, everybody was like, I saw Phantom, or I saw Les Mis on some tour in New York when those shows were new. People had those aha moments. I had never seen a play until I was like in a high school English class, and we went and saw Hamlet. No, Julius Caesar. And I thought that was cool, but I don't think it really was that big a deal until I got to do improv, like Viola Spolin, old school improv exercises with an acting teacher in high school, and I found that kind of performance and collaboration easy, like it seemed natural, like I was hardwired. It seemed. I know it's cultivated and it takes practice, but like I was like, oh, I get this. And I was not an athlete. I didn't have a thing, I didn't have a tribe, a group of, like I was kind of at sea anyway. So I probably poured a lot of myself into it once I found out, oh, I can do this. There is community here. People like it when I do it. I mean, very superficially, I got affirmation. And I was also blessed to have parents that supported me. And like, okay. They saw enough of plausibility in it, I guess,
Right.
in terms of how what my acumen was, and so they're like, okay, we'll support you. And so I again was not very ambitious in terms of like, this is what I want to do. Okay, how do I do it? Oh, I know somebody who went to Ball State University, which is like, I'm from a suburb. At that time, I was in a suburb in Indiana, which is called Carmel, Indiana. And a guy who graduated a year before me went to Ball State, and he was doing theater at Ball State. I was like, well, maybe I'll go to Ball State. And I'm like, okay. They had a theater program, so I went to Ball State. That was didn't occur to me to like whatever the outcome would have been. I was like, what did I even know what NYU was, or Juilliard, or Carnegie Mellon, or any of the North Carolina School of the Arts? I didn't do any research of like what cool important theater programs were. I was a Midwestern kid, and I was like, I'll go to that school, and I did. And luckily, it was a small enough program that I just kept doing it. I just got the opportunity to just keep doing it. No one ever told me to stop. I got to do more and more improv there. I had a mentor in undergrad, Dr. Don Hetty, who had me do an improv exercise in one class and was like, that's really good. So let's start an improv troupe. And so like, that was the creative seed. Like that's how I worked well. And that's how I always wanted to work. And I think that's one of the reasons I have remained. And so it's been my creative north, that spontaneity, of the creative process. And so I went into a Meisner conservatory, which was also ostensibly about spontaneity. A lot of polluted baggage that goes with that, but still there. And then the theater community of Chicago. So I think the aha moment I've been lucky for it to continue to happen.
That's awesome.
Have you been able to like use your, outside of the scripted plays that you do, do you ever do improv in the city, or you're shaking your head no.
But within shows, yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm wondering, like, do you get to work on new scripts a lot and kind of be a part of that development?
Not as much the latter, although more recently that has happened. But I became a serious actor. I'm making fun of myself when I say that. And so I just gave up on new stuff. That was it. I mean, really, I became kind of ossified. I was like, this is what I do. This is what I do well. This is what's getting me work. I got lazy. I guess that's part of it too. And so like I never took acting for the camera class. I didn't take any improv classes. I just kept telling myself, well, I know how to do that. It's all the same. Obviously, different skill sets in terms of the specificity of what prepares you to succeed. But I found a niche as a Shakespeare guy, right? So there's, the spontaneity of that is in rehearsal, not so much in performance. And then I developed a good working relationship with Charlie Newell down at Court Theater, and he's challenged me with new ways of working and new pieces. And one of them was that Iliad, and that was all direct address. So there's spontaneity in that I hadn't really experienced. And then you're all alone. So if you make a mistake, that's another reason I'm less fearful as an actor, is because you're like, once you've survived 90 minutes of being on stage by yourself and stuff going wrong, what else is there to be scary, I guess,
Right.
And then we did One Man, Two Governors, which was made, famous by James Corden on Broadway and West End, where there's all this real interaction with the audience. They used a plant, but we used a real audience member every night.
Oh.
Picked at random. Well, not completely at random, but like someone who had nothing to do with the show. I would bring them up on stage and have them help me through like about a 15-minute stretch of the play. So that kind of spontaneity I got to do. And then new material. I've had the opportunity to work on a couple of new plays, and hopefully we'll do another new play in 2025, I think is when it's slated to do, that we're still working on the script. I'm not allowed to say anything about it.
Okay.
Shh.
That's awesome.
I will say this. This is a cozy, like by the fire. There's a piece in your story, even if it has been privileged and you have been lucky, and there's still just something really kind of like chill and cool about it that I am a fan of in this moment, and I just wanted to say that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
And I must agree, because I don't think we mentioned it yet, but I did understudy Tim in Birthday Candles at Northlight a few months ago.
Yeah.
And Tim, your performance is so like understated and like subtle, and like completely different from how I played it, and I think you have that really like grounded, genuine vibe. So
Well, we should talk more about that. Like that's when I said we should go on your podcast. I want to know what it's like to understudy me. I'm terrified to know the answer.
Oh my God, that's so great. I'm just so tickled that we made it this far before we brought that up. It's like we all forgot.
Oh, I didn't forget. I was just like, we're not ending this podcast without me bringing it up if you don't.
Right.
Because like that would be a whole nother podcast because of how privileged my career has been. I have encountered more than one person who has covered me. Like there's a guy at court, Jason Heisman, who's covered me in like at least 6 different things. All 3 iterations of that one man Iliad. He covered me as Iago in Othello. He covered me most recently in the Theban plays there when I'd been doing Creon. Like Jason is the guy at court that they call to cover me. Like that's a guy you should have on your podcast. Not because it's about me. I just mean like he's had to do it the same guy over and over again.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Scott, make a note.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah, stuff.
Because I didn't make a note.
And then you guys can really break it down. And I will never listen to that episode. Okay, let me ask you a question then, Scott. So in Birthday Candles, the woman who played
Ernestine,
there it is. I was going to panic and call her the wrong character, which I did
your
before
wife's
we ever
character,
started. Yeah. My wife, Kate Fry, played Ernestine. And then the character I was playing was named Kenneth. Am I explaining something you already know, Alana?
No.
Okay. So it becomes a romantic relationship. And because we were married and because one of my scholarly research is also intimacy, direction, and choreography, Kate and I would have conversations outside of rehearsal, and then we would kiss and touch each other the way the characters were, but we never had to talk about it. But as a result of our relationship, we were able to do things that I don't know that I would have felt as comfortable doing with an actor who wasn't my wife.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like lurid or anything. It was just like the incidental touching was more casual.
Yeah.
So what was it like to think of like, okay, if Tim goes out, I've got to go on and play this opposite his wife. What was that like?
That was funny. And I'll say, since like I have a day job, so like I wasn't able to like go to rehearsals with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So very much like what I was following was basically just, I don't know, the mechanical of what you were doing on stage, So when we did get to have understudy rehearsals, and Kate, oh no, I can't remember her last name, but
the other understudy who covered Ernestine was also named Kate, so it's confusing.
Right, exactly. But we were able to like just kind of naturally find those things. And I mean, the tricky thing about especially like the last scene or few scenes with Kenneth is that there's a time jump and they've been together a few years. So you have that kind of sunken in familiarity. And so, I mean, like in that kind of case, you just play it, you act it, you say the words, and you try to like find organically what that is. So me and Kate, understudy, did that. And we didn't have a intimacy coordinator or anything like that. But we just kind of trusted each other and went for it. There's not a whole lot of kissing in the play. Oh, you know what we did actually though? We actually like just did like a high five.
Yeah, placeholder.
Placeholder when we kissed. Most of the time. And then when it came to our like producers performance, I had been exposed to COVID like 5 days before. And so I had to wear a mask for that, which sucked.
Yeah.
But and so like that of course affected the physicality. And
Did you high five when you had the mask on?
I'm
Yeah, what
trying
else
to
could you have done?
remember.
Right?
Can't go in and kiss through your mask.
I think you know what? I think we kind of just like went like more huggy kiss, so it was like a kiss on the cheek kind of thing. Yeah, but if I'd had gone on with Kate, your wife, that would have been interesting. Like I imagine we maybe would have run those sections
Yeah, to
before the
firm it up.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our stage manager Rita Vreeland, I think was very aware of that situation. Both if Kate Fry had to go out or you had to go out, that we would need some kind of put in at least for those moments. So yeah, no, it was interesting. I mean, and on the other hand, like I'm gay, so like it's not like there's a lot of like, like, ooh, I'm kissing another man's wife, like that's like we
I didn't think that that would have crossed it. It's just a straight, it creates a different dynamic to have those two people that are actually married in real life also then playing these couples. I don't read reviews, but I know that the narrative of us being married and how that informed the show became something I heard about, because people, even though if you tell them, friends and family, that you didn't never read reviews, but no, this is good. This is how they start it. Well, thanks for not sharing the bad ones, but like still don't tell me. But they just kept alluding to our relationship being part of people's perception of the show. And so that just complicates things in a creative way that wouldn't otherwise be true, gay or straight. It does
Right.
or actors are actors, but like it's a strange, I don't know, the positionality of that, like stepping in and everyone knows that you're not married to her, but in other performances there's a guy that is. I mean, it was weird. It's just weird.
Yeah, well, and I mean, complicating that further is that like at the beginning of the play, these guys start at the age 17.
Yeah.
And she does not like Kenneth, so like if you already know that they're married, like it complicates, I guess, your idea. But like once you kind of like sit into the play and like just focus on that, you guys are good actors, so
well, it's not relevant, really, right? I mean,
exactly.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But people want to know. I mean, because Kate's career has been remarkable, and she has people that are fans, and sometimes there's been issues with that, and so we put in our bios that we're married to each other, so that it provides a buffer for Kate that is necessary. But it also then people just have seen her and know her, and so the familiarity of audience and her and us. It's weird when complete strangers, use your first name. It's just weird. Oh, yeah. I'm a big fan of you and Kate. Like, why are you talking about my wife? What does that have to do with us meeting randomly at a grocery store?
Are you friends with my wife?
Like you know our name. I don't like that's. It's just weird.
Yeah, people are weird.
I can't imagine what it's like to be seriously famous. You know
I know,
Like,
right? Like you're
Lord.
just Chicago theater famous.
Yeah.
Like,
But even that, it's just weird. It's just so weird.
Yeah.
But I was just always curious, like, you're a professional, a consummate professional. You have a whole podcast about understudying. I wasn't worried about your ethics or anything like that. I was just curious how you thought about it. That's all. But you answered it. Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll be right back with Tim Kane. You're on in 5. We're back with Timothy Edward Kane, and
now it's time for the breakdown.
All right. So, Tim, our question today is kind of inspired by my experience on birthday candles. So I'm going to give a little background for our listeners. I understudy Tim on the show Birthday Candles, and it's a very beautiful play about a woman who we see her birthdays from 17 to 100 and something. And so a lot of things happen during the play. She marries, she has kids. She those kids have kids. Her kids die. Like it's a lot. And I found like pretty much I think it was like final preview that like I was watching the play and I love this script. It's so beautiful. And I was getting so into it that like by the end of the play I was a mess. Like I like actually had to like leave the theater and like go and cry for a bit. And I mean that there's all sorts of personal stuff entwined in that, sure, but like also it's just a deep play. So our question is, have you ever had to kind of oh no, let me go further. Um, so I found that when I was watching the play for the 5 weeks that it ran, I really had to kind of zone out on any scenes that weren't Kenneth involved. Because Kenneth has a very nice arc in the play.
Sweet track, yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering if there's any plays where you kind of had to do that, where you had to like protect your heart um, at all, like because the subject matter either was intense or just really hit you in a specific way.
Uh, I feel nothing. I'm dead inside, so it's super easy. No. Um, I I have been lucky to play some really ugly characters.
Mm.
I have found that that aligns with certain aspects of the way I'm wired as a human. Not because I hope I'm a bad person. I mean that someone they immediately think that I'm a villain, but I'm not extroverted normally.
Mhm.
I It's mostly fear driven, like like anxiety, social anxiety that makes me go in. And then in my process, I'm the opposite in terms of what I undertake. So I feel like there's a natural like exertion retreat in like kind of the way I am as an actor or a human. Um, but doing Richard the Third, he's like a prowling animal, and then the soliloquies give him a chance to kind of vomit and process. Um, and then Iago was even worse. And so what's the common thread there? Oh, and then I guess one even worse than that is Bradley in Sam Shepard's Buried Child. He's he does this awful thing where, as written, he's got the young woman cornered, and he walks up to her, and I can't remember exactly what the stage direction is in terms of how it works. He makes her open her mouth and then places his hand in her mouth. That's the stage direction. That's it. It doesn't say then he does anything. He doesn't grab her tongue. He's very explicit. Puts her hand, takes it out. And those are some of the worst roles in terms of types of characters. That's what I think of when I think of stuff that is hard to like you don't want any of that any of those three characters and bleeding into my real life.
Yeah.
Because they're so obviously tainted characters. It was easy. It was relatively easy to say, okay, I'm not going to take that home. I'm going to go for it and support it honestly and truthfully, but I don't think I'm taking any of that home. And luckily I had good collaborative relationships with the actors in all of those three processes in which I think they knew that it wasn't me and that we weren't worried about there being a violation of their space or, their humanity. frank conversations about the inherent racism in Iago was all about that whole production of Othello. So um, I think we understood what we were undertaking there together, Kelvin Ralston and I. And so I think that wasn't. And I enjoy a good commute. I mean, I don't like driving. I don't like commuting, but like the commute is my um, closure practice.
Your detox, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
that I don't like to carpool
Yeah.
so that I can be alone. I don't want to have to have conversation. I just want to be alone. Depending on the length of the commute, it's just music or just stupid sports radio or a Cubs game, in the summer, or listening to books on like just like leaving it, just
Mhm.
leaving it at work. The ones that are just truly exhausting, like, you cited Birthday Candles, like Kate playing Ernestine. I mean, she's on stage the entire time. It might as well be a one-person show. She never leaves from the first moment to the last. That's a different kind of exhaustion. That's that. And then I've been, if there's been a track or a role or an opportunity like that, it's been the pure exhaustion that has helped me separate.
Mm.
And anytime I've ever had trouble with like life, work, bleed, it's because my ego got in the way.
Huh.
My ego misinformed it. I thought I was special. I thought I was amazing. I thought my co-star wasn't, I don't know, like I'm making stuff up now, but like it was about me and my insecurity and me wanting to think I was important and awesome. That's when I had baggage.
That's a splendid observation.
Yeah.
It was hard fought and obvious to other people,
Yeah.
maybe before it was to me, but it took me a while to get there.
I have an answer for this, but before I do, I want to ask you, how did you, for those characters, those bad people you've portrayed, how do you reconcile knowing that you can pull it off, right? That's in you, right? Even if it's just as a matter of art, right? But like it's in there, and you were able to access it. Did you access it? Did you think about that, and did that make you feel a way at all?
I don't know. That's just such a specific way of asking that question. As in any play, you say the lines in the order they're written. That does 90% of character. I mean, that like the playwright has decided.
Mhm.
Right.
So if not me, someone else. And if it's worth doing, then there must be some aspect of a shared humanity that is worth interrogating. Ones that are like historically problematic, like Othello, that required there was some heavy lifting done there before I ever arrived in rehearsal on that particular production. I've never done anything like that. They actively tried to recenter Othello as the main character. They retitled it. It was the story of the tragedy. I forget now what the full title was now, but they made it about Othello. And as a result of that, they took, and it's not like it doesn't need cutting, but they took, like, I'm going to guess conservatively, like 30% of Iago's lines out. So it really was a distillation of the relationship and his animus. So am I capable of seeing how I could, if I thought I was passed over for a promotion, behave badly? Yeah. I've already shared an anecdote in which I thought something that was mine I didn't get.
This is true.
So I am an imperfect human, and those characters are generally important to a story is about other characters that are maybe less unsavory, right? They're antagonists. So I had something else I was going to say about that, and I don't remember what it was. But I think I kind of sort of answered your question. Yeah, it is problematic, especially, I mean, I'm a middle-aged white dude. There are a lot of roles for guys like me that are not nice people.
Yeah. I got a role I really, really wanted that I didn't get initially. Right? Milk Like Sugar, working with teens from Sen,
Mm.
directed by Michelle Mo. And I didn't get it at first. And I was like, that seems weird. But the person who got it beats me out of roles. It has come down to the two of us a number of times. P.S. I won't say who she is, even though I think I may have before. She's excellent. And she ended up getting something at the Good, so they called. So, but now I'm faced with having to carry this sort of animosity towards my own child in this show. I don't have any children. And in fact, all of the plays where I went to a new kind of place emotionally that I may have had to protect my heart from involved me being a parent. But in this one, you know, this she doesn't want to see her child do better than she has in life. And I had a lot of trouble, and like I called Tim Rose out at Fleetwood Jourdain, and like I need help. Yeah, I don't know, but we actually we talked about it a little bit, but then we never got together. Like voicing my concerns with him kind of helped me a little bit. What I found and why I asked you the question I asked you is that I was afraid to access what was required, because to me that meant that exists in me. And I don't have an academic background. Like I took some acting classes, but I've been acting since I was 7, right? So the place I play from has I don't do like beat work and da 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 da. It's always internal. It's always gut. And you know, sometimes I have to find other ways. And like I'm missing something. I'm gonna walk funny. I'm missing something. I'm gonna be left-handed. You know, like until I get to where I'm gonna change my voice. So, you know, I have to play, but usually I can get it from within. But if I can't, then I work outside in. But for this, nothing was working. It just felt like a block. When I broke through it, I know it was because the truth of that mother and that portrayal frightened me, and the honesty of it frightened me. I got over it, and I mean, not over it. I leaned into it, right? Because it was what I needed to do. But there were times during scenes where especially like the worst scene where I completely lose it on her, that Elmana was almost crying, right? And I had to hold that, because Mom is not about to cry about this, you know. And so I fight that. When I directed Scott, there were a couple of times I'm like, there's the dichotomy, right, of you and your character, right? You have to be present. Don't get so lost that you're not aware, you as Scott aren't aware of what's going on, right? We have to keep that, like, for when shit goes wrong. We need Alana to know how to fix it for character or whatever, or whoever else is around, because the character ain't about to hold up a beam falling from the ceiling, you know what I mean? So I, you know, and that was one of very few times where I had to keep Elana suppressed, because I'm super emotional, and I don't try to hide it. And, you know, all of what it took to be so hostile and so angry and so jealous of who's supposed to be my child, who Elana wants to uplift and be proud of and send out into the world, that was just hard. And, you know, I had time, before the show ended, when I didn't come back anymore. So I had time to detox before I even left the theater, because I didn't have to go back on stage. But, if I had to leave, if I ended the show with that heightened scene with her, I don't know. I might have a drinking problem today. You know, it was a lot. And I also know, you know, I'm from the hood of Detroit, right? And so I know that dynamic. I didn't live that dynamic firsthand, but I recognize it, and I naturally want to distance myself from that. So it was a wonderful exercise in acting and my skill level and what I could really do or whatever, but it was heartbreaking. It was a heartbreaking show in and of itself. But so that's one, you know, that really really kind of got to me. The work ahead of it and then during it was really something. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, wrestling with that, and there's a little bit of us every day, all the characters we do, and sometimes it's fun, like the monkey in the Wizard of Great and Terrible Wizard of Oz. Like I've never really played a villain, but I was one of the flying monkeys who didn't fly, and when we killed Toto, the satisfaction I felt from the disappointment from the audience was unreal. So I'm like, I'd be like crouched down on the floor, and every night, out of my control, I would get this smirk. It was just so delicious. And I'm just like, who is that person? It's like nobody directed me to enjoy that as much as I enjoyed that. And because everybody would be leaned in, and Joey, who was Toto, like he had, he does a whole monologue, and, as Toto, like telling his life. So they really, really, he's endeared himself to them, and they're like leaned in during this whole thing. And then like, and we have this sound effect in silence, so that neck is just like. And then I'm like, am I ever going to get to play somebody as evil as that little monkey on the floor? She was just reveling in this, And so that's fun. That I have to protect my heart from that. No. I just hold that in my heart, like right. One of these.
Because it's so far away. You're already pretending to be a monkey. So like right. The degrees away from your true self are like more apparent to you, the creative, and to the audience. So like they can lean into it, right? They're not afraid.
Right.
Of that, yeah.
So yeah.
I do think it's easy. It's easier in theater. I guess maybe that's it. Is that like there are roles I would definitely not even audition for on film, because that's forever.
So true.
And people get confused about it too, like what's real and what's not real. I feel like if people buy a ticket to a play, they know no one's actually getting stabbed. They know no one's actually dying, so they're immediately up for engaging in the fantasy of that shared moment. Not the forever, like Tim Kaine really hates Kelvin Ralston. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Right. They know that when I say the line, I hate the Moor, they mean the character Iago hates him in the context of this play. And so like that, perhaps that's the membrane as I see it. And so that creates enough space for me to go, well, this isn't me, but this is true now. And I feel a great deal as the character. And if there's some personal discomfort, it only gets in the way because I'm already perhaps being more emotionally intelligent than the character.
Right.
And all those as you discovered, like that frustration of like, I really want to cry. A character like that in real life doesn't have that. Like, right. So that's what builds up is hate. That fear of like all those feelings turns it into hateful action.
That's so true.
So it's good that you felt it.
But yeah. Huh. I don't know that I've ever said all of that out loud about that show.
Oh, I especially that idea of having to separate yourself from it to protect yourself. It's intense.
Yeah. I recently did a play where I was playing a pretty racist guy. I mean, he's like, it was like 1954 or something like that, and
back when they were still racists.
Right, I was about to say, right?
Like, back when that was a thing.
When America was terrible.
Olden times, yeah.
No, but finding my way into that character was the tricky thing. But once I found it, like, okay, this guy is burdened by the expectations of what he thinks he should be, and it's not so much that like he is racist, it's that he is like the circumstances of the play. That's how I found my way into it, and it was pretty easy to say like, okay, yeah, I'm not that person. So when I am finding those moments of microaggressions, what I feel like as Scott I'm doing is almost like holding up a mirror to the audience and being like, hey, have you ever done this?
Mm.
You know? And like that's how I justify it as Scott, to be able to do that. But like, you know, you're right. There's really like, you cannot take the personal hesitation that you have and put that into your character. You have to really cut that off. And it's somehow easier to do that when you can sense that disconnect from the character.
It's also, this is a little bit counter to what we're all saying and agreeing to, but like I think it's also important to be careful about judging our characters, right? Because like you know, like you just can't. You know, you can't like be in judgment of the character and also play them honestly.
Right.
You have to find that line. And your way, it like, you know, of course most racists wouldn't call themselves racist. You know, like they have a set of principles and beliefs and habits or upbringing or whatever, you know, things that just have become part of their fabric. Some, of course, obviously know they're racist, but you know, the average person who appears racist to the observer is operating in a way they've learned how to operate. And it's difficult, you know, to because we know what we know, right? But I think it's important. I spent there was, I'm not gonna name like because there were real people involved, but I had to, you know, I was judging the hell out of a character I was playing once, like real bad. And you know, I wasn't off. The performance wasn't awful, but it was definitely freeing to realize that and cut it out. You know, like I can't even I can't give her what she deserves from me as an artist, as an actor, as a storyteller, while I'm judging her choices and behavior. It can be hard.
I was recently offered an understudy role for a show, and I read the script, and it was hitting a lot of like negative things for me. Like the character was gaslighting other people. He was kind of aggressively sexual. I'm not really those things. And like if I were cast in that role, I think I could do it because I would have the process to figure all that out. But because I would be understudying, and kind of like felt with Birthday Candles, where it's just like I'm experiencing this play and I'm going to have to experience it over and over and over.
But what you're saying, if you were to cover that, then you would have to just drop into it and kind of try it on more casually, as opposed to having the process to insulate you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I get
and
it.
so, and like doing all that work on your own within your own little, you know, circle, and not being able to share that or discuss it with other people. Like that was one of the great things with Rosenberg, the play that I was mentioning earlier, where I was playing the racist. We had, it was a cast of a Jewish male, Jewish female, and an African-American woman, and me, white male. And the discussions that we had as a cast really like allowed me to be like, okay, we're talking as actors, we trust each other as actors, so now I can go ahead and as this character be an asshole or whatever. But the process is really key there, because if without that process, it would be more painful.
Yeah, like creatively limiting. I mean, it's like, how do I make these choices as an understudy? Like, how do I do it? I'm not a part of the ensemble. It's weird enough if you have to go on and like kiss someone who is, you know, normally blocked and rehearsed to kiss somebody else. That's a strange enough. But if you then come on, it seems even more intimate and more invasive to come on and be abusive to them in that way. Yeah, it's alienating. Yeah. Do you both know the play Slave Play by Jeremy O. Harris?
No.
I've read it.
That's a play that terrifies me. I have never read a play that terrifies me as an actor. As a piece of theater, I mean, it's astounding. It's aggressively groundbreaking and just mind-blowing in terms of how it disassembles these themes of race and positionality and lived experience and sexual dynamics, all of that. But as an actor, it's absolutely terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know it, Alana?
I mean, I've heard of it, but I've
Yeah.
never read it.
Just in
or
terms of
seen it.
stagecraft, there is some of the most intense staged intimacy I've ever encountered in a script. The whole premise is that these three couples who are mixed racially as couples go to this retreat to explore their sexual dynamics of their relationship through some kind of intense fantasy work in which all the relationships are black and white. And so they exorcise this dynamic of slave and master in these three different relationships. So that's already problematic in terms of what that requires creatively. But then what they do to each other sexually is super explicit.
Wow.
So I don't know. One of your questions, you're like, maybe think about something, an opportunity that it terrifies you. Slave Play by Jeremy O. Harris. I couldn't imagine being an understudy in that play.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would be, as to your example, Scott, it would be hard enough to be in that process and build that world and build the levels of trust that are requisite. And then the closure practice is to make sure everybody's okay at the end of every night. And then to be the person who's the swing, who's going to be like, oh, I'm in it tonight. What?
No way.
I mean, there's a part where I don't want to give anything away, but like incredibly intimate, where you're like, how do they even mask it? Like, how do you not do the thing he's describing?
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked up a production photo because I was studying it just as an academic, and like their set on Broadway was mirrors. So you literally couldn't hide anything.
Way.
There were mirrors on the upstage walls, and there was one over this bed. Like, there's like nowhere to hide anything. It's just astonishing in terms of the question that you posed in terms of like separating self from art, and then how does that translate as an understudy? Hamlet's hard, sure. There's a lot of lines in Hamlet, and there's a sword fight. Oh my God, sure, that's hard. I can't think of anything harder.
That is incredible, because you have made me realize that everything I've understudied in Chicago has been pretty emotionless. I mean, they've been just kind of like a matter of fact roles, not like shallow necessarily, but just like nothing intense at all.
Mm.
Good girl.
Well, go read this play and then imagine understudying it. If it doesn't melt your brain, then you're a stronger person than I.
Holy moly.
I just can't imagine it. I mean, because even the language, you've read it, Scott.
Yeah.
Even the language, the way they talk about race and dynamics is it's traumatizing to read, let alone have to say. I mean, traumatizing. I don't mean to misuse a clinical term there, but it's deeply impactful.
Yeah.
In terms of how frankly it confronts it, like a semi plowing right through it. It's unbelievable and hilarious too. I mean, that's the beauty of it. I mean, it's like he finds humor in it, and obviously it's surprising, but it's just I couldn't possibly. I don't even know I don't know that I'm brave enough to accept a role in it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if there's a theater in Chicago that's brave enough to produce it.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm sure the Goodman probably got the rights just automatically, but the fact that they haven't done it is an indication that you're taking on a lot by even producing it.
Holy wow. Well, and with that, it's time for props!
All right. And in props, we like to give shouts out to understudies, overstudies, stage managers, assistant directors, anybody who helps you get to that point that you can understudy, or anybody who is a great understudy that you've had in the past.
Are we starting with me?
Yeah, we're
Yes,
starting with you.
Am I the only one? Well, I mentioned him earlier, Jason Heisman, who has covered me multiple times at court, particularly in this one-man Iliad that I did. That's when I first met him. So he's been on that journey with me 3 times. So knowing that he was there to support me, because it was physically and vocally taxing, And to know that he was just always prepared and ready to go. It's been amazing. And the other one that I would recommend that I was always impressed with was David Turrentine. I don't know that he's still understudying as much, but he's also an accountant. Many actors accountants in Chicago.
Wow.
But he was always, when he was in shows, historically he covered so many of the male tracks at Chicago Shakespeare, which it's Shakespeare, so there's like 40 men's roles in every play, and so David was always, when I started there, particularly in the first, who cares? He was always covering somebody, and he was always amazing. I mean, he was always prepared, and seeing someone do it in multiple, different productions over a period of years, it's just like, that's a guy who gets it. Like it's its own thing. When we were talking earlier about how students don't necessarily understand it as a skill set, that's a guy who gets it. He understands his job. He came in, there was always a little bit of David in every role that he covered, but not so much that he, overseasoned the stew, right? But a professionalism and a presence and a playfulness that was always just astonishing. Those are two actors. And then all the stage managers that always got all those understudies ready and made it fun to have understudies go on. And then when I was an understudy, also those stage managers. So the ones that I worked with most frequently, the late, great Deb Acker, she was the PSM at Chicago Shakespeare for almost 30 years. And she just passed away last year, this past year, but she was like forevermore the gold standard of what a PSM is. I mean, she was funny, she was observant, she didn't miss a detail. So if you've been in those understudy rehearsals where you're like, do they go over here? And the stage manager's like, I'm not sure. That was never Deb. She was like, no, they stand there, and then they go there, and they go there. She just she didn't even need a prompt book. She just memorized the show and the rhythm, which was unbelievable. That skill set of a stage manager to understand that cues come on breaths, not just with lines, that, so she could tell you what that connective creative tissue was as an understudy. Like, I don't understand why he does what he's doing here. She's like, well, I don't know, but this is what it feels like. And so you could work superficially back from her point of view. That was just, it's such an efficiency. As an understudy, you're just trying to get to the thing that was always amazing. So she, and down at court, there was also Amanda Wiener Frederick. She's no longer a stage manager. She's moved on, but she was amazing at doing the same thing. Aaron Albrecht, also down at court. William Collins, also down at court. Just amazing stage managers. Rita Vreeland always has her understudies prepared at Northlight.
Yeah, awesome. I'll throw in a few because the show that I'm doing right now is Golden Girls Save Christmas, and we have 2 understudies for like 13 roles, which whatever. I'm not figuring that out. David Lipschitz is a friend of mine who I've known for many years, and he's jumped into rehearsals in 2 or 3 different roles and just kind of kills it every time. He's just hysterically funny, doing slightly different stuff, but still fitting definitely in the world of the play. And our other understudy, Jordan, has not had that opportunity yet, but I'm sure he'll be very good. And then tonight, actually, our director, Frankie Leo Bennett, is going on for Sophia, the mom. So that's going to be a fun experience. We'll see. We just literally opened yesterday, so
oh my God.
Yeah. So should be fun. Frankie's a pro, so I'm sure he'll be great. And then Kate Compton was your wife's Kate Fry's understudy for Birthday Candles, and she was wonderful. That entire team of understudies, everybody at Northlight, really, that show was just so professional and well done, and it was such a great experience from my end as an understudy, for sure. So
it did feel like a big family. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Alana, anything? Any
I
props?
thought I did, but I don't. Not because people aren't awesome. People are awesome everywhere. I don't know. I haven't been doing anything. Remember
That's
how
right.
I don't have anything going on. So yeah,
Great.
nothing for me.
All right. So Tim, we like to wrap up our shows with the question of what is something that either you would tell yourself getting into the business or somebody who's getting into the business now, something you wish you knew but didn't.
I struggle to how to encapsulate that, right? Like, I mean, as a teacher, and every year there's another crop of students that come sit in my office and they're like, I'm going to graduate. What the hell am I going to do?
Yeah.
And there's not a succinct answer, right? There's a large element of just pure determination, like just raw will. And I think if I was able to speak exclusively to myself, now I'm not talking about any student I've had before, but like there is healthy ego, because you need a certain belief in yourself to keep confronting the harsh reality of what this business is.
Mm-hmm.
So I would tell myself to talk less and listen more,
Mm-hmm.
because there was always good examples of good work and how to work, and more importantly, how to be a good human in every rehearsal room that I was in. If I had got my head out of my own butt of thinking I was better than everybody, or needing to think I was better than everybody, because I certainly wasn't. So yeah, talk less, listen more, for sure, and lead with your heart. There's no reason to protect it all the time, and keep breathing. All these things, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you probably have a little experience sharing these nuggets of wisdom, but we appreciate you sharing it with us.
Of course.
And that is it.
That is it.
Is it?
Thank you so much, Tim.
Oh, thank you both.
Yeah,
It was a
thank
delightful conversation.
We hope you enjoyed our conversation today with Timothy Edward Kane, and that it gives deeper insight into the art of understudying.
To send us a question or give a suggestion of someone we should interview, email us at understudypodcast@gmail.com.
Or hit us up at UnderstudyPod on Facebook and Instagram, because nobody does Twitter anymore.
X. We want to thank all of our Patreon subscribers, especially Marcella Huff and Stanley Sava.
If you want to support the show, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/understudypod.
Our theme song and all other music are by Laura McKenzie.
Our episodes are edited by me and produced by me and Alana. Doi.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, please hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice and tell your friends.
And if you hated it, tell your enemies.
And their parents.
And their stupid, hateful parents.
Bye.
Bye.